He brought her to the gala to prove a point, then abandoned her mid-event for the woman he really wanted. What he didn't expect: that she'd rise, reclaim her power, and marry the one man he could never compete with. Everything about tonight was supposed to be perfect. I'd spent 3 months planning the Chin and Lin PR gala down to the last crystal bead on the centerpieces. We'd secured Rosemont Grand, sent out engraved invitations, handpicked every dish on the menu. And of course I'd chosen my gown with purpose. Emerald green off-shoulder with a slit up the leg that whispered, effortless power. Because this was my night. My company's biggest milestone yet. The Wu Holdings partnership, and my 7th year with Zachary Lin. The man I was told had just walked in. "He's here," my assistant Chloe whispered, nudging me as she scanned the entrance. "Table 1 is ready. Should I bring him over?" I turned, lips already curving into a smile. And then I froze. He was not alone. Zach walked into the ballroom with his arm around Mei Huang, the intern-turned-junior strategist the girl I'd mentored, corrected, covered for. She was wearing a red sequin dress that looked disturbingly similar to one from my old collection. She was wearing my lipstick shade. And Zaki was beaming. The murmurs swept through the crowd like wildfire, half hidden behind champagne flutes and forced laughter. Photographers shifted. One even called out, "Mr. Lin, over here. Is this your date for the night?" Zach didn't hesitate. "She's more than that. Mei is my partner." The breath that left my lungs was cold. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. But when his eyes met mine across the ballroom, I held his gaze. Steady. Pulled. Zach raised a brow, lips quirking into that arrogant half-smirk I used to find charming. Like this was some kind of game. Like he expected me to march up and make a scene. I did no such thing. Instead I turned to Chloe. "Tell the AV team we're starting the program. Now." "But we're not." "Now." The applause was light as I stepped onto the stage. The microphone was warm under my fingers. I took a breath and smiled into the sea of faces. "Good evening, everyone. I'm Vivian Chin, co-founder of Chin and Lin Public Relations. And on behalf of our entire team, thank you for joining us tonight to celebrate the milestone we've worked so hard to reach." People listened. But they were watching me, not my speech. Watching how I stood. Watching whether I'd fall apart. I didn't. "In business we prepare for every possibility," I continued, voice calm. "We anticipate crises. We draft statements before the flames even spark. But what we don't always prepare for is when something, or someone, surprises us." That got their attention. Zach's expression twitched in the crowd. I smiled. "To those who surprised me tonight, I offer you a toast." I lifted my glass. "To bold substitutions, may they be worth the risk." A ripple of stunned laughter rolled through the ballroom. Backstage, I closed the green velvet curtain behind me and exhaled. Not shakily, not brokenly. Just, done. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. There it was. The drafted resignation email I'd been too cautious to send for weeks. Subject: Resignation from Chin and Lin PR. I hit send. It was poetic, really, ending everything on the same night I'd been replaced. Outside the ballroom, I walked into the long corridor lined with black tie portraits of past galas. I needed a minute. Just 1 minute to myself. I leaned against the wall, the emerald silk of my dress cooling against my skin. My hand clenched the stem of my glass tighter than I realized. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. It wasn't Zach. It was Ethan Wu. He wasn't supposed to be here. At least, not there. Away from the VIP table, away from the curated conversations. Tall, dressed in a sharply cut charcoal suit without a tie, eyes like slate. Unreadable. "Miss Chin," he said simply. "Mr. Wu," I replied, standing straighter. "Was there something I could assist you with?" He didn't answer right away. Instead he studied me. Most people would have thrown the wine. "Tempting," I muttered. He almost smiled. "But you didn't." Kept my voice even. "It would have stained the wrong dress." His gaze flicked toward the ballroom. "Quite the twist, bringing your own replacement." "He does have a flair for dramatics." "I thought that was your job tonight," he said dryly. I glanced at him. I guess I was upstaged. He paused. "You didn't blink during your speech." "Not once." "I'm in PR, Mr. Wu. We're trained not to flinch." "Still impressive," he murmured. "Most people would have cracked." Maybe I still will. But not here. Not now. His expression shifted, almost thoughtful. He looked like he wanted to say something else, but instead he stepped aside. Good luck, Miss Chen, he said simply. Whatever you're planning next. I watched as he disappeared back into the gala, leaving only the scent of amber cologne and unfinished thoughts. I didn't return to the ballroom. Instead, I slipped out the back door and into the night air, cool against my bare shoulders. The city lights blurred in the distance. Somewhere behind me, May was probably toasting with Zach. Sitting in the seat I should have had. But I didn't care. I'd already handed the company over. I'd already let go. That night, as I peeled off my dress and wiped the last of my makeup, my phone lit up again. Zachary Lin, Viv. Can we talk? I didn't answer. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. And then I placed the phone down face down and opened my laptop. I had no company. No title. No job. But I had one thing left. Options. By morning the headlines were everywhere. Shock at Chin and Lin Gala. Founding partner Vivian Chen replaced by intern turn date. Mei Huang debuts as Zachary Lin's new flame, just hours before his ex's speech. Vivian Chen's calm clapback steals the night. Toast heard round the ballroom. My inbox exploded. Reporters. Bloggers. Columnists. All of them wanted a quote, a comment, a soundbite. Everyone wanted to know if I would cry publicly, or better yet, retaliate. I gave them nothing. No statements. No posts. No answers. I let the silence work for me. Let it stretch. Let Zach stew in it. That afternoon I was having lunch alone at Café Ilera, my sunglasses on, blazer draped over my chair, laptop open. The waiter brought over a pale blue envelope. No return name, just my name in smooth ink. Vivian Chen. Inside was a single cream card. 11 a.m. tomorrow. Penthouse level. Wu Holdings Tower. EW. I stared at it for 3 full seconds. Then smiled. At exactly 10:59 a.m. the next day, I stepped into the private lift that led to the top floor of Wu Holdings Tower. The receptionist didn't ask who I was. The doors opened into a private office suite. More minimalist art gallery than workspace. Matte charcoal walls. A 6-panel window wall looking over the skyline. And in the center, Ethan Wu seated with sleeves rolled up, scrolling through something on his phone. He didn't look up right away. Vivian. I wasn't aware we were on first-name terms. After last night, I feel I've earned it. He finally looked up. Controlled. But his expression? Curious. Like I was a new product he wanted to test thoroughly before investing. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said. You don't strike me as someone who invites people without certainty they'll show up. That made him smile just barely. I don't do pity, he said. And I don't do politics. I do execution. Is that what this is? I asked, stepping closer. An execution? No, he said. A recruitment. I raised a brow. Ethan stood walking to the wet bar near the corner. Coffee. Straight black. He poured 2, handed one to me and gestured for me to sit. I remained standing. He didn't mind. You've spent the last 7 years helping mediocre men stay at the top of this industry, he said plainly. And last night one of them tried to publicly humiliate you. Tried being the key word, I replied. Exactly. Most people would have spiraled. You gave a toast. I've had practice. Still, he said, setting his coffee down, it impressed me. I folded my arms. You didn't call me here just to say you're impressed. No, Ethan said. I want you to work directly for me. Not under Wu Holdings. Not under PR. Just under me. The room went quiet. I blinked. You're offering me, what exactly? Chief Strategic Advisor, he said. Personal. Confidential. High-level liaison across global acquisitions. Public relations, yes. But more than that. Image, diplomacy, preemptive crisis control. All of it. With full authority. And reporting to? Me. Only me. A slow laugh slipped out. You're asking me to leave my firm, burn every bridge and jump into your world on loyalty alone? He stepped closer. You already burned the bridges. I'm offering the parachute. I took a sip of coffee. Bitter. Hot. But like him. This feels like a rebound, I said bluntly. Ethan studied me. It's not. I've been watching your work for 2 years. You never said anything. I didn't need you then. I do now. I set the cup down. And what if I say no? Ethan shrugged. You'll walk out of here and start your own firm. In a year you'll probably be my competition. And I'll regret not locking you in. I narrowed my eyes. And if I say yes? He stepped in. Close enough to feel the heat of presence without it being invasive. If you say yes, he said softly, you'll be untouchable. I tilted my head. I've heard that before. Not from someone who meant it. My heart, which had been boxed and locked since last night, fluttered. Just once. Then I asked, what would I be in your world, Mr. Wu? He didn't blink. The only one I'll trust. It wasn't flattery. It was fact. His tone made it clear. That's when I understood. He wasn't offering me a job. He was offering me a seat at the table no one else could reach. I extended my hand. Then let's begin. Ethan didn't shake it. He covered it with both of his. Solid. Grounded. Warm. That night, as the city glimmered outside my window, I sat alone in my apartment with a signed contract folder open on my desk. My phone lit up again. Zachary Lin, you're really going to ignore me? May's just temporary. We need to talk. I powered down the phone and picked up the signed agreement with Wu Holdings. They didn't even wait a full news cycle. By the morning after my contract was signed, the media had already moved on from Vivian Chin, betrayed partner, to something far more scandalous. Vivian Chin, from gala disaster to Wu Holdings' inner circle? Mysterious power shift. Ethan Wu hires PR queen overnight. Sources say she's more than just his advisor. The worst one. From ex-fiancée to executive mistress? I sipped my coffee and turned the page. It wasn't the headlines that bothered me. It was the tone, how quickly the narrative flipped. One day I was a victim. The next, a schemer. I didn't respond to any of it. Let them speculate. In the elevator up to Wu Holdings HQ, a junior analyst stared too long before finally asking, is it true? About you and Mr. Wu. I looked at him calmly. Which part? His ears turned red. Never mind. Good answer. Ethan didn't mention the rumors. Of course he didn't. He simply handed me a folder that morning. Investor dinner at the Langham this Friday. You're coming. I raised a brow. As your advisor? He didn't flinch. As my date. There was a pause. Won't that confirm everything they're already saying? I asked. He looked up. Only if we let it. By Thursday, Zach showed up at my apartment. I was mid-phone call, still in heels, when the doorbell rang. Chloe's voice buzzed in my ear. There's someone downstairs, he's refusing to leave. Name. Zach Lin. Of course. I ended the call, pressed the buzzer and waited. 30 seconds later the elevator doors opened and Zach stepped out like nothing had changed. Viv, he said, hands in his pockets trying for casual. I figured we should talk. I folded my arms. You figured that after bringing May to the biggest night of my career? He flinched barely. She pushed for it. Said the press would pick it up and I didn't think would react. I didn't think you'd walk away so clean. That more than anything made me laugh. He took a step closer. I saw the headlines. Ethan Wu. Really? You sound jealous. I'm asking if it's true. I leaned against the counter. What part? He scowled. Are you trying to get back at me? No, Zach. If I wanted to get back at you, you'd know. You'd be bleeding PR clients from every direction and sitting in regulatory meetings you couldn't get out of. He blinked. I'm not getting even, I continued. I'm getting ahead. Are you sleeping with him? Does it matter? He looked cornered now. Desperate. We were together 7 years. Yes, I said. 7 years of you forgetting how to introduce me in public. 7 years of half-promises and hidden birthdays. 7 years of thinking I'd never walk away. His jaw tensed. You're really doing this? I already did. He didn't reply. Couldn't. I walked past him and opened the door. You can show yourself out. He lingered. Last chance, Viv. I smiled coldly. You had your chance. And you handed it to Mei Huang in a red dress. Friday came fast. I stood outside the Langham Hotel, wearing a black satin gown with an open back and a silver clasp at the throat. Simple. Commanding. Ethan met me at the car, sharp in a midnight blue suit. He didn't say anything as he held out his arm. I took it. Inside, the room was already buzzing. Tables lit with votive candles. Soft jazz in the background. The kind of event where deals happened behind smiles. A few heads turned as we entered. More than a few, actually. Ethan led me straight to table 2, where half the board of Wu Holdings was already seated. He pulled out my chair. Just before I sat down, his fingers brushed the small of my back, lightly, casually, and lingered there just a second too long. My breath hitched. Not from nerves. From how easy he made it look. For the next hour we made polite conversation. Discussed foreign expansion strategies. I caught the admiring glance of a hedge fund VP 2 seats away. Then the waitress came around with wine. As she bent over to refill my glass, Ethan's hand found mine under the table. His thumb swept across my palm once, slow and deliberate. I didn't pull away. And when I looked at him, he wasn't even looking at me. He was talking to the table across, like his hand wasn't wrapped around mine in full view of every journalist, photographer, and investor in that room. I swallowed and smiled. And right on cue, someone snapped a photo. By the next morning, the picture was everywhere. Vivian Chin and Ethan Wu seen holding hands at Langham Investor Gala. Confirmed power couple? Strategic or romantic? Vivian Chen's silent rise from PR star to inner circle royalty. Zach Lynn's ex now outranking him in influence. Sources say he's not taking it well. I stared at the headlines from Ethan's office window. He walked in a minute later, tie loose from a board meeting. Quite the storm, I said. He glanced at the screen. Let them talk. And if they're right? He looked at me, his eyes unreadable. Then we'll make sure they spell your name correctly. If you were to believe the tabloids that week, Mei Huang was the face of modern fairy tales. From assistant to arm candy. Mei Huang's rise. The woman who won Zach Lynn's heart. Zach's new muse spotted in cherry velvet gown. Cherry velvet. That's how they described the dress. A cheap knockoff of a vintage Roland dress I once wore to a gala in Tokyo, and sold months later to fund a junior strategist mentorship program. The same program May applied to and quit halfway through. He was everywhere. She knew exactly where the cameras would be and what angles made her look wide-eyed and modest. Soft blush, glowy skin, one leg barely visible through her side-slit gowns. It was textbook media positioning. And she was playing it like a seasoned actress. Zach, of course, said nothing. No clarifications. No denials. Just posed at her side while she smiled like a debutante being crowned queen. But what made me laugh was the headline from one of the bigger outlets. May wears Vivian's shade, but can she wear her shoes? It wasn't credited to me, of course. I didn't leak it. I didn't have to. Investor dinner this Thursday, Ethan said casually as he dropped a folder onto my desk. East Asia portfolio heads will be there. It's public. Media access. I raised a brow. He continued without looking up. You'll need to be dressed accordingly. I always am. No, he said, finally looking me in the eye. I mean dressed to be watched. Pause. I closed the folder and smiled. I know exactly who to call. By Thursday morning, I had my pick of the city's most exclusive designers. I chose a dress not even released to the public yet, a custom piece from Cala de Lumiere's unreleased Parisian line. Midnight teal silk, liquid in motion, with a sharp collarbone cutout and a dipped back that walked the line between regal and ruthless. I arrived in a black car with tinted windows. Ethan stepped out first. When I joined him, heels clicking on marble, cameras snapped almost instantly. I let them. I looked directly into the lens of the most aggressive paparazzi, gave a soft nod, and allowed Ethan to guide me inside with a hand resting lightly, deliberately, on my lower back. The ballroom buzzed with quiet awe. The elite were hard to impress, but tonight I saw heads turn and whispers swirl. I caught one woman nudge her partner. That's Vivian Chin. The Vivian. Zach Lynn's ex. And now Wu Holdings' golden girl, her husband muttered. Zach was already inside, seated at table 5 with May. She wore red again, this time a ruffled chiffon gown that didn't quite fit her frame. As I passed, our eyes met. May blinked too fast. Zach stiffened. I kept walking. Dinner passed smoothly. The conversations were mostly finance jargon and silent tests of power. Until the dancing started. Ethan leaned toward me. Are you going to make me ask? I don't dance with clients, I said. I'm not your client, he replied. I stared at him. You're my boss. He tilted his head. Only on paper. A beat passed. I stood. He took my hand. The orchestra played something slow and sweeping, full of strings and understated drama. The ballroom watched. Because of course they did. We moved in time. Polished. Measured. The kind of rhythm born from tension that had nowhere else to go. You planned this, I said softly. Of course. You knew Zach would be here. Yes. You knew May would see this. Yes. I met his gaze. Is this revenge or strategy? Ethan's hand on my waist tightened just slightly. Does it matter if the result is the same? I didn't answer. Instead, I glanced toward table 5. Zach wasn't eating. His jaw was clenched. His arm had fallen away from May's chair. May was pretending not to notice. She looked anywhere but us. Do you miss him? Ethan asked quietly. No, I said. But I miss who I thought he was. That's fair. His thumb traced a faint line along my spine. I didn't flinch. You know, I said with a faint smile. He used to promise me nights like this. Candlelight. Applause. Everyone watching. And now they're watching, Ethan murmured. Yes. But I'm not sitting next to him. He looked down at me. You're standing with me. I let the silence linger, let the orchestra's swell fill the air between us. Then I whispered just loud enough. Funny, isn't it? What is? That all it took to make him nervous was for someone else to treat me like I matter. By the end of the night, the headlines were already being drafted. Vivian Chin dazzles in Paris couture at Wu Gala. Who needs closure when you've got chemistry? Ethan Wu and Vivian Chin, the power duo we didn't know we needed. Zach Lin, Mei Huang in awkward position as X steals the spotlight again. I didn't need to leak a thing. They wrote it themselves. As the driver opened the car door for us, I paused. Ethan watched me closely. You choreograph everything, don't you? I asked. He tilted his head. Is that a problem? No, I said. It's just refreshing. To see someone play the long game and not pretend otherwise. He reached for the car door, but didn't open it yet. There's no pretending with you, he said. That's the point. Back at my apartment, I peeled off the gown, stood before the mirror and stared. Not at my reflection, but at the woman who no longer needed to ask herself, what would he think? Because it didn't matter anymore. Zach had picked someone cheaper, easier, flashier. And Ethan? He picked me without apology, without hesitation, without permission. The evidence came in a manila folder, dropped onto my desk without a word. Inside, 3 campaign decks, 1 brand proposal and a confidential internal pitch. All signed under a different name. Mei Huang. I sat very still. Each file was a reworded version of something I'd either written, co-led, or directly designed in the last 2 years at Chin and Lin. She hadn't even changed the fonts on one of them, just replaced the cover slides and added a foreword by Mei Huang. Sloppy, bold, and very, very stupid. Ethan's waiting, Chloe said softly from the door. Conference room 19. I brought the folder with me. When I entered, Ethan was already seated at the end of the long glass table, sleeves rolled up, tie off. The room was empty but for us and the floor-to-ceiling city skyline. I slid the folder across to him. He opened it, read silently, then closed it, and asked, local or global? I leaned back in my chair. Excuse me. He rested his forearms on the table. Do you want her blacklisted just in Greater Asia? Or internationally? I blinked. No, let me handle it. No HR review. HR is for amateurs, Ethan said. This is theft. Of your property. Of your labor. I don't need a meeting to know what to do. I need your call. I stared at him. No pushback. I asked. I said I trusted you. I meant it. I considered. She's small time, I murmured. Going nuclear would give her too much drama. Too much press. He wants attention. Let's not give her any. Ethan tilted his head, nodding slowly. Silent erasure? Precisely. Understood, he said. Her credit lines will quietly vanish by the end of the week. Talent directories, brand outreach channels, event lists, scrubbed. I met his eyes. Just like that. She messed with the wrong executive. There was a pause. Then he added, "You don't have to get your hands dirty, Vivian. Let me handle that part." Something in his tone, the way he said it low and calm, felt less like protection and more like a promise. And something in me didn't mind. That evening the office was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when the last elevator has dinged, and only a few late souls remain, neck deep in deadlines or denial. I should have gone home. I didn't. I stood outside Ethan's office with a takeaway bag in hand. He opened the door without waiting for a knock. "You still here?" he asked. "You still working?" He glanced at the bag. "Dinner. Bribery. For what?" "For not judging me for eating dumplings in the most expensive building in the city." Ethan smiled, a rare private one, and stepped aside. "Come in." We sat on the black leather couch by his window. The food was warm, the light low, the city stretching endlessly beyond the glass. "Is this normal for you?" I asked, handing him chopsticks. "What?" "Late nights. Long silences. Power over people's careers." He took a bite before answering. "Normal. Yes. Satisfying. Only when it's deserved." "Do you ever regret it?" He looked at me. "Do you?" My jaw tightened. "Not regret," I said. "Just exhaustion." We ate in silence for a moment. Then he spoke again. "You didn't hesitate. About May. She didn't deserve hesitation. That's rare." I looked up at him. "So is your kind of backing?" A moment passed. Then he said softly, "You looked untouchable the other night." "I was pretending." "I know," he said. "That's what made it impressive." I set the food down. The tension between us, subtle at first, thickened. He shifted slightly on the couch, his knee brushing mine. "You've been careful," I said. "So have you." I turned toward him fully. "Are we going to keep pretending this is just strategy?" Ethan didn't answer with words. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was light, but his gaze wasn't. And when he leaned in, he paused just inches away, giving me space, giving me the choice. I didn't move. So he did. His lips brushed mine. Once. Then again, firmer this time. A kiss that started restrained, but carried a weight neither of us wanted to name yet. When we broke apart, his hand lingered at my jaw. "Is this crossing a line?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I whispered. "But we've both been tiptoeing around it long enough." I didn't go home that night. At least not to my apartment. Ethan's penthouse wasn't what I expected. It was all muted stone and clean lines. No personal clutter. No photographs. The home of a man who controlled everything, except the fact that someone might see through him. He handed me a t-shirt. "Top drawer if you want real clothes." "Is this your usual post-seduction routine?" I teased. "I don't have one." I changed in his en-suite bathroom. When I emerged, he was pouring 2 glasses of wine. We stood by the window. He offered me mine. We clinked silently. Then he said without looking at me, "I don't want to ruin this. Whatever this is." "You won't," I said. He finally looked over. "How do you know?" "'Cause I'm not Zach. And you're not careless." Ethan's hand found mine again. "You're not a placeholder, Vivian." "I know." And somehow that was enough. The next morning I woke up before him. The city was still gray with sleep, the sky just beginning to turn blue. Ethan lay beside me, one hand resting over the sheet, breathing steady. I watched him for a second. Just one. And then I reached for my phone and opened the media tracker app. There at the top. Mei Huang drops from 3 campaigns overnight. Speculation mounts on her future as Vivian Chen's star rises. Sources say silent blacklist is underway. I closed the app. And smiled. My phone started ringing at 2:17 a.m. I didn't need to check the screen. It was the same number that had called at 9:04 p.m., 10:31 p.m., and again just after midnight. I silenced it again, placing it face down on the marble coffee table in Ethan's penthouse. But I didn't go back to bed. I sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city stretching out beneath me in flickers of gold and white. The air was still. Cool. The kind of silence that made old wounds knock faintly at your chest, asking to be acknowledged one last time. Behind me, the soft rustle of sheets. Then, "Vivian." I didn't turn. "Phone again?" Ethan asked, voice still heavy from sleep. You're not answering?" I shook my head. Not anymore. He came up behind me bare-chested, still warm from the bed. He didn't say anything right away, just placed a folded blanket over my shoulders and sat beside me on the floor. We didn't speak for a long time. Just watched the sky slowly shift from indigo to pale blue. The next morning I finally looked at the voicemail transcripts. Zach's voice, slurred slightly in the later ones. Viv, this isn't how we're supposed to end. Come on. You know this isn't real. He's not you and me. May's just a mistake. I messed up. But you know how I get. You always understood me. I still care about you, Viv. You can't just turn it off. I didn't respond. Not because it didn't sting, but because the sting had dulled. Blunted. Like a knife that once cut deep, now barely scraped skin. Later that day I walked into Ethan's office with 2 coffees and slid one across the table. He looked up. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He studied me for a beat, then asked, still thinking about him? No. You're lying, he said, not accusingly, just fact. I'm thinking about who I used to be with him, what I let happen, what I mistook for love. Ethan took a sip of coffee and leaned back in his chair. I used to think being needed was the same as being loved, I said. He didn't say anything, just set his mug down and looked at me in that quiet, steady way of his. What are you thinking? I asked. That I'm glad you know the difference now. That night it rained. Not heavy, just a soft, persistent drizzle that whispered against the windows like something asking to be let in. I was curled on the leather sofa in Ethan's living room, my laptop on my knees, reports half-read, when he walked in holding a small plate. Chocolate-dipped strawberries, he said. I blinked. You bake? No, he said. But I own people who do. I laughed. He smiled faintly. You've been quiet today. I'm trying to decide if I should return Zach's necklace. The one he gave you in Prague? I nodded. It's yours, Ethan said. You don't owe him closure. I'm not trying to give him closure, I replied. I'm trying to make sure he knows he lost something he'll never hold again. Ethan sat beside me and pulled the blanket from the back of the couch, draping it over us both. His arm rested behind me, not quite touching, but the warmth of him reached anyway. You don't have to prove anything to him, he said. He's already haunted. That made me pause. Do you think he regrets it? Ethan didn't hesitate. Absolutely. How can you be so sure? Because you didn't become vindictive. You became untouchable. Around midnight the power flickered once. The rain tapped harder now. Ethan got up and came back with a second blanket, wrapped me tighter and sat across from me on the rug. He watched me quietly. Then he asked, what do you miss most? Be honest. I thought for a long time. Being held when I didn't have to be strong. Ethan didn't speak. He just reached over and took my hand. And for a moment I didn't feel strong. I felt safe. And it was better. He stayed beside me that night on the couch. Not because we had to. Not because it was seduction or strategy. But because sometimes, the softest intimacy is the kind that doesn't ask for anything in return. By morning, Zach had called 3 more times. I didn't block him yet. But I didn't answer either. And when Ethan passed me a fresh coffee with a quiet, morning, I realized something. I didn't need Zach's apology anymore. I didn't need to be remembered. I was finally forgetting him. Zach was trying to rewrite the narrative. His team sent press invites to every major media house in the city. A grand relaunch announcement for a new private equity fund under his own name. Bochin. No Lynn. Just Zachary Lynn Holdings. I saw the flyer. It was scheduled for Thursday at noon. A bold time slot. Central press cycle, high visibility. Probably chosen on purpose. I smiled. So did Ethan when I slid the invite across his desk. Should we let him have the spotlight? I asked. Ethan glanced down at the RSVP list and chuckled. No. That was all he said before picking up his phone and calling the Wu Holdings comms director. Schedule our acquisition reveal. Same day. Same time. Make it global. He hung up and looked at me. You sure? I asked. He met my eyes. He brought you down once. You don't owe him mercy. By Monday the city was buzzing with whispers. 2 titans. 1 time slot. People called it the showdown. News anchors speculated about who would dominate the press cycle. Publicly I said nothing. Privately, I sent a stylist to my apartment with 3 gowns and a single instruction: command the room without raising my voice. We chose the navy pantsuit with a satin-lined cape sleeve. Silent. Deadly. Thursday noon. Zach stood behind a podium with a half-empty press pit in front of him. He tried not to show it, how the camera crews kept glancing at their phones, how reporters left halfway through his speech, how the back row was filled with interns instead of editors. He pushed forward anyway. "This is a new chapter," he said, smiling too tightly. "And I'm excited to lead with clarity and vision." But they weren't listening. Because down the block at the Four Seasons Ballroom, the Wu Holdings logo gleamed over a white marble stage, and the city's power brokers filled every seat. The cameras were already live when Ethan walked out. I followed a moment later. Flashes exploded. Screens lit up. Social feeds flooded instantly. Wu Holdings acquires Nexitech in $3.2 billion global buyout. Vivian Chin leads communications strategy on landmark deal. I stood beside Ethan as the press fired questions. "Vivian, is this your first major strategic lead since leaving Chin and Lin?" "Yes," I said smoothly. "And not the last." A few rows back, a female journalist raised her hand. "Some say this timing is a direct response to Zachary Lin's announcement." I smiled. "What announcement?" Laughter rippled through the room. Ethan didn't blink. He stepped in. "We don't time our success around others. We simply lead." Another question came from the side. "Mr. Wu, is Vivian Chin now your official spokesperson?" He glanced at me. "She's more than that." The room leaned forward. Ethan continued, "She's my partner. Professionally and otherwise." The room went still for a second before breaking into a flurry of camera clicks and rapid-fire typing. I didn't flinch. I simply placed my hand lightly on Ethan's forearm and said, "We'll be taking no further personal questions." At Zach's venue, someone handed him a phone during the last question. He watched the livestream on mute. There I was, calm, flawless, the cameras capturing every controlled smile. The way I looked at Ethan. The way he looked back. May wasn't there. Hadn't been for days. And now she wasn't even returning calls. When the event wrapped, Ethan and I stood behind the curtains while the press packed up. He turned to me. "Was that too much?" "No," I said. "It was just enough." Because it was true? Because it was strategic? He tilted his head. "And if it's both?" I didn't answer. But I didn't walk away either. That evening I received a message from someone in the press. "Zach tried to spin your event as coincidence. But no one's buying it. You just buried him." I stared at the screen. Then typed 2 words. "No comment." Then 3 more. "Let them wonder." Later that night, Ethan poured us each a glass of wine as we sat on his terrace overlooking the skyline. "The media already coined us a power couple," he said. "They're not wrong. You good with that?" I took a sip. "They can call us anything they want. Just not temporary." He looked at me for a long moment. Then raised his glass. "To permanence." I clinked mine against his. And for once I didn't feel like I was proving anything. I just felt free. It started as most modern disasters do, with a leak. The email chain hit the press around 7:04 a.m. on a Monday morning, right when media execs were sitting down to their first coffee, fresh from the weekend, looking for something scandalous to run. Subject line: confidential, targeting Chen's past accounts. The sender: Mei Huang. The recipient: a talent scout from a rival PR firm that had once tried to recruit me and failed. Content: Vivian won't last at Wu. She's a rebound hire. Wu Holdings is known for volatility. Once they cut her, I'm perfectly positioned to pick up the accounts she managed at Chin and Lin. I've attached 3 internal decks Vivian drafted in 2023. You'll see my adjustments clearly. If we repackage and pitch now, we can get ahead of her. Attached: my pitch strategies, brand briefs, and campaign drafts. Stolen. Watermarked. And doctored. Badly. By noon, it was trending on 3 major business forums and a finance gossip Twitter account that called it the rise and public self-destruction of a corporate pick-me. By 1 p.m., Ethan's legal team had finished reviewing the documents. By 2 p.m., the lawsuit was filed. Ethan didn't ask. He just called me into his office. "Would you prefer to see the filing now," he said calmly, "or after the embargo lifts?" I slid into the seat across from him. What did your team use? IP theft? Breach of ND? All of it. Plus a clause from our brand protection division that penalizes shadow pitching under false authorship. I glanced at the screen. 3 pages. Clean. Brutal. Direct. She wasn't going to recover. Still, I asked, want me to give a quote to the press? Ethan looked up. Do you want to? No, I said. Then don't, he said simply. I sat back in the chair. You're not even mad, he observed. I smiled faintly. I'm not surprised. That's worse. The next morning, May issued a public statement. It was 3 paragraphs of fluff, skirting accountability and ending with the classic. I never intended harm and have the utmost respect for those I've worked under. Worked under. Not with. Not beside. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my espresso. By noon, 3 of her sponsorships had quietly pulled their names from her media profile. By 4 p.m., a major brand she'd been in talks with posted a cryptic quote to their Instagram story. Integrity is louder than ambition. No names. No tags. But everyone knew. The headlines came fast after that. Wu Holdings sues rising star Mei Huang for corporate theft. From intern to inmate? Sources confirm legal action underway. Vivian Chin remains silent. Powerful. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The silence did the talking. But I did send her something. A white envelope. Inside, no threats. No letters. Just a single printout. Matte framed on heavy paper. Vivian Chin. Vice President Strategic Affairs. Wu Holdings International. A title she had once whispered about in team meetings, smiling like she believed she'd be the one to get it someday. She never replied. But I know she received it. Because 3 hours later she deleted her LinkedIn. Is that what revenge looks like to you? Ethan asked that night as we walked through a private exhibit of minimalist installations in a gallery he'd rented just for the 2 of us. No, I said, studying a steel sculpture shaped like a rising flame. That's what balance looks like. She tried to rewrite your story. I shrugged. She tried to wear my shoes. But she never bothered to check the size. He smiled at that. And now she'll have to go barefoot. Quietly. By Friday the internet had moved on from sympathy to satire. A meme page posted side-by-sides of May's interviews next to mine. One caption read, she said, I'm just lucky to learn under Vivian, and then tried to delete Vivian. Another, May, I'm not like other girls. World, correct. Other girls don't commit corporate fraud. Ethan walked into my office with his laptop showing me a headline that made him laugh. Vivian Chin destroys Mei Huang without saying a single word. Queen of corporate chess. I think they've finally stopped calling her your replacement, he said. I closed the tab and took a sip of tea. She never was. He leaned against my desk. What now? Now we finish what we started. The week after, I made my first solo appearance at an economic summit in Singapore. I stood on the panel between a fintech CEO and a luxury logistics magnate, discussing women in corporate restructuring. Every reporter quoted the same line from my answer. I found that power doesn't come from speaking louder. It comes from never lowering your standards, not even once. No one mentioned Zach. No one mentioned May. Just Vivian Chin, poised, respected, untouchable. Exactly as I planned. The night I returned, Ethan was waiting with dinner at his apartment. Candles. Real ones. Soft jazz on vinyl. Not a single assistant in sight. Is this a date? I asked, stepping out of my heels. He handed me wine. You decide. We ate slow. Talked less. There was no need to say much anymore. When he reached across the table and took my hand, I looked down at our fingers. This, I said quietly, doesn't feel like a rebound anymore. That's good, he said. Because it never was. At midnight my phone lit up again. Not with a call. Just a message from a blocked account. You were always going to win. I just wanted to know what it felt like to be you. I didn't reply. Instead I turned the phone off. And climbed into bed beside the man who never once needed to take anything from me to prove he could keep me. The art auction was hosted in a glass atrium near the river. Sleek, high-ceilinged, full of rich patrons who collected oil paintings like seasonal handbags. I wasn't there for the art. Wu Holdings had been invited to preview an investment partnership with a European gallery, and Ethan had suggested I go in his place. Something about seeing how people stare when you walk in alone. It wasn't vanity. It was positioning. Image was still currency. And I had become the rare asset no one could quite value, only desire. I wore black, structured, sleeveless with a high slit and diamond cuff. Minimalist. Dangerous. Deliberate. Eyes followed. Whispers rose. And then I saw him. Leaning against a champagne table, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass like it weighed more than it should. The moment he saw me, he straightened, not quite surprised, not quite ready. I almost walked past him. But he stepped in front of me. Viv. His voice was lower than I remembered. Not softer, just tired. I looked at him. Zach. You look. He stopped. Tried again. It's been a while. Has it? He offered a half smile. You've changed. No, I said. You're just seeing clearly for the first time. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly off balance. I've been meaning to call. Don't. I miss you. Zach. He swallowed. May was. I don't know what that was. Stupid maybe. Desperate. But it wasn't love. I arched an eyebrow. And you think this speech will fix something? No, he said. I just want talk. Just understand how we got here. I stepped slightly to the side, not away, just enough to make the distance known. You got here, I said calmly, by trying to replace me before I even left. He looked down, jaw tight. You knew who she was, I added. You knew she was studying me, mimicking me, and you let her sit in my seat, wear my dresses, recite my lines. It wasn't like that, he said quickly. It was. You were bored, I said. And I made you feel ordinary. That stopped him. You used to call me your secret weapon, I added. Then you let someone else try on the armor and wondered why it didn't fit. A heavy silence followed. I think about you all the time, he whispered. You think about losing me, I corrected. And then behind me I felt the quiet heat of presence. The arm that wrapped naturally around my waist. Thin. He stood beside me like he'd always belonged there. No words, no tension. Just certainty. Zach blinked. Oh, he said bitterly. So this is real. Ethan tilted his head. You're surprised. No, Zach snapped. I just thought she'd need more time to get over me. Ethan's grip on me didn't tighten. He didn't react. He just smiled. You always did overestimate your importance. Zach's gaze flicked between us. You stole her. Ethan's voice was calm. You can't steal something that walks away. My breath caught. Not because of what he said, but because of how true it felt. Zach took a step forward. She was mine. No, I said, voice low. I was yours until you stopped treating me like someone irreplaceable. He stared at me. You really love him? I respect him, I said. That's more than I ever got from you. The silence after that was different. It wasn't just tension. It was final. Ethan extended his hand. Shall we? I took it. And without another word we walked away. Past the paintings, past the cameras, past the man who once thought I'd orbit him forever. Outside the air was cool. Ethan didn't speak until we were inside the car. Then, you okay? Yes. You didn't need me to step in, he said. You already won. I looked at him. Maybe. But I liked the reminder. His hand found mine again. And I didn't feel stolen. I felt chosen. The engagement announcement didn't hit the front pages. Not immediately. There was no fanfare, no red carpet reveal, no champagne-sprayed gala to steal headlines. Just a discreet press release sent at dawn under Wu Holdings' corporate banner. We are pleased to announce the upcoming marriage of Ethan Wu, CEO of Wu Holdings International, and Vivian Chen, Vice President of Strategic Affairs. 2 lines. No quotes. No drama. The media called it elegant. Others called it ruthless. But everyone read it. Within 12 hours, it was the top trending headline in the business and luxury sectors. The most powerful couple in Asia. She started as the +1. Now she's the headline. Zach read it alone. Sitting in a high-rise apartment he didn't own, surrounded by glass walls that couldn't keep the cold out. A courier had dropped off the envelope 2 days later. White. Unmarked. No branding. Inside, one single card. Matte ivory. Pressed gold. Vivian Chin and Ethan Wu. Request the honor of your presence. At their private ceremony. He stared at it for a long time. Not because he was invited, but because it made something undeniable settle in his chest. He was no longer part of the story. He was just an echo in someone else's ending. The wedding was held in Kyoto, under soft lanterns and late-blooming cherry blossoms, the kind that only flower briefly before surrendering to the wind. Ethan had rented out an ancestral courtyard compound, minimalist and serene. No photographers were allowed inside. Just people who mattered. His mother. His youngest sister. Vivian's former mentor. Chloe. The lawyer who filed May's IP case. A dozen power brokers who now addressed invitations to Mrs. Chen Wu. The chairs were arranged in a perfect semicircle, no stage, no altar. Just openness. Vivian stood inside a dressing room built of ancient wood and silk screens, staring at her reflection. She wasn't wearing white. She wore deep rose gold, a gown she'd designed herself. Clean lines, sleeveless, draped across her back with an asymmetrical fold that looked like a rising wing. No veil. No pearls. No borrowed anything. Everything she wore she chose. Everything she was she earned. Outside, Ethan waited in a tailored black mandarin-collared suit. He didn't look nervous. He looked like a man who'd stopped chasing and simply waited for what was already his. When the doors opened, the music didn't swell. It hummed softly, deliberately. Vivian walked alone. No father. No figurehead. Just herself, walking forward. Not to be given away, not to be received, but to stand beside someone who never once asked her to be less. Ethan smiled when he saw her. Not the public smile. Not the one for cameras or boardrooms. But the kind he used when she walked into a room barefoot and furious. Or when she beat him at chess at 3 a.m. Or when she told him the name she wanted on her new business card. Mrs. Vivian Chenwu. The officiant asked, "Do you have vows?" Ethan nodded. He spoke first. "I didn't fall in love with you because you were strong," he said. "I fell because you didn't ask me to be stronger than you." Vivian smiled faintly. Then spoke. "I didn't stop loving myself to love you," she said. "And you never asked me to." They exchanged rings. No clapping. Just breathless stillness. And a kiss. Not passionate. Not ravenous. Her.Sir. Afterward there was no reception. Just an evening under open skies, sipping plum wine while stories were told and soft laughter rose into the lanterns. Vivian looked out at the horizon, her hand in Ethan's. "I thought I'd need to destroy everything," she said quietly. "To win." "You didn't destroy it," Ethan murmured. "You outgrew it." "Same thing," she said with a smirk. He squeezed her hand. And that was the real victory. Back in the city, Zach never replied to the invitation. He didn't need to. The world had already RSVP'd without him. Monday's headlines were brief but ruthless. She was the +1 at his gala. Now she's Mrs. Wu. Vivian Chenwu isn't just his wife. She's his equal. From replacement to reckoning, the woman who didn't just win, she redefined the game. And somewhere in the quiet corner of a penthouse, Vivian folded her engagement announcement, slipped it into a drawer and whispered softly to herself. Just a new chapter. The end.